Hi, I am Erica Mitchell. This is Module 8 for EDL 851, Supervision and Evaluation. So we looked through the articles, and the first article was Teacher Evaluation Heads to the Courts, and that article focused on 14 lawsuits that had to do with teacher evaluations in multiple states, a lot of appeals from teachers about the evaluation process that their district was supposed to follow. It addressed all sorts of issues, these lawsuits, like student achievement and whether or not that should be factored into teacher evaluation scores. A lot of states appealed that and didn't think that that was appropriate. Whether or not the evaluation should affect the tenure, unfair evaluating systems, not accounting for things like poverty in the area and that effect that that takes on the scores of the student body as a whole, because we all know that that does make a difference, and that the systems were too vague and ended up setting teachers up to fail and not receive the score of effective or highly effective at the end of the year. The second article was about teacher performance evaluation and issue overview. And this addressed a lot of the things that have changed within teacher evaluations in the past 10 years. A lot of the changes were based on new research for teacher quality and the recognition of how important it is for teachers to be evaluated and the impact it has on education as a whole and students in the efficacy of the school. They made changes based on teacher effectiveness, and that the changes in the importance of the evaluation boosted the effectiveness and motivation for teachers. There were a lot of groups and policymakers that were revamping the state laws on evaluation, making sure that they were fair for the teachers and administrators, making sure that they were transparent for everyone. The evaluations were being found as ineffective before a lot of changes were made, and a lot of the annual scores, effective, highly effective, even minimally effective, those repercussions that should have been taken with those who are not scoring in the effective or highly effective areas, the plans for improvement were not being followed through on. So they found that it was important that there was a plan in place, and that would be part of the evaluation system. And it gave the opportunity for a lot of funding for new evaluation systems and stricter guidelines. A lot of people were recognizing how much we needed to put into evaluation systems because having effective teachers is everything in a school. The evaluation factors that were included in the teacher evaluations were the student test scores and observations and a value added model as well. A lot of districts started using that evaluation to affect tenure, pay, or dismissal. So based on your rating at the end of the year, factored in from all of those aspects, that could potentially affect your dismissal or your tenure or your pay. The teacher unions were reluctant about these evaluations and how they would affect pay and tenure, and they weren't sure that they questioned using testing scores as a factor in a teacher evaluation and whether or not that was relevant. They gathered that the teachers with the high quality feedback that boosted student performance as well, which we realize goes hand in hand, teacher efficacy and student performance. It also motivated a lot of teachers during critical times, those who were at the cusp of dismissal or receiving a bonus or a pay upgrade, that motivated the teachers to be a little bit more focused and driven on a certain area that needed improvement. And it's still a constant ongoing topic of discussion. They are always changing different things, as we know, and finding new things to factor in and the importance of certain aspects and how important, how much of the test scores should be considered, what percentage should be observations, um, that type of thing. Article 3 was about teacher evaluation guide, and it provided information on a lot of the issues that need to be considered when selecting or designing an evaluation system. It stated that the core purpose of teacher assessment and evaluation should be to improve the knowledge, skills, dispositions, and classroom practices for professional educators, which really sums up why we're doing this. What's the purpose? What's the point of this? Is it just we do it because we have to do it? What's the purpose of this? And that statement really hits the nail on the head. It ties back into all of those factors go into student achievement and student motivation and student engagement. There were 6 key elements in this article to developing an evaluation system, and it listed things like collaboration, open collaboration, a lot of ratings and clear standards, an integrated system, validated evaluation measures. And I really enjoyed that the teacher input was considered when reading this article, because I find that that's important as well, and that it was designed by multiple perspectives and participants, administrators, teachers, school board. A lot of people in education had an input on designing that system, which is important. It wasn't just one-sided. It also talked about how a reward system overlooked the entire purpose of evaluation, which I agree with that. I think that we shouldn't necessarily be rewarded. I feel like it's just an opportunity for us to be evaluated and then evaluate ourselves and see how we can then become a better educator. I don't think a reward should be at risk when you're being evaluated. It did talk a lot about being an effective teacher, and they defined an effective teacher as referring to instruction that enables all students to meet or exceed ambitious goals for student learning. They listed that effective teachers have high expectations for students, contribute to positive academic, social, and attitudes for the students. I think that that's very important to set those expectations high and then contribute to all of their success in school and all of their positivity and all of their experiences. Effective teachers use a lot of resources and teacher approaches. They contribute to developing diverse and civil classrooms, and they collaborate with teachers, administrators, parents, and educational professionals. And that all ensures student success. So I found that this was really clear. Effective teachers, when I read that, I thought, yeah, that's what I strive to be, and that's what evaluations should be. That's the purpose behind evaluations. That's what should drive the evaluations. They also discussed the Model Core teaching standards, and that those are used to develop an effective school system. The core standards were learner development, learning differences, learning environments, content knowledge, application of content assessment, planning for instruction, instructional strategies, professional learning and ethical practice, and leadership and collaboration. And those are all just core factors in an effective school system as a whole. The last article was about teacher evaluation measures and the systems and how they improve teaching and learning. It discussed the considerations when designing meaningful teacher evaluations and listed some key components of successful teacher evaluations, which included creating linked and integrated systems, using validated evaluation measures, and establishing credibility. Those are all important, because if you introduce a new system to your staff members and say, this is the evaluation system we're going to use, this is going to determine your score or your ranking for the end of the year, they're going to need to know that, yeah, those are valid. Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, it's creditable. They're going to want to know that their performance is being based off of a system that works and that's been studied and that's been integrated. A lot of the instruments that they use for evaluation is scoring and training, generalizing, and interpreting different aspects of the teacher and their performance in the classroom. So I teach in Charlevoix, Michigan, and our school district uses the 5D evaluation framework for evaluation, and it's based around 5 core elements of effective teaching: teaching purpose, student engagement, classroom environment and culture, assessment of student learning, and curriculum and pedagogy. And those are what we're presented with. We have an entire framework, and within those 5 elements are key areas and examples of how we should be effectively including that in those areas in our instruction. So our goal at the beginning of the year is each of the staff members chooses 3 areas to focus on. We are evaluated on all the areas within the 5 elements, but we choose 3 focus areas that we reflect on the year before and think maybe I need to focus more on classroom environment and culture, or giving more purpose. For example, this year, one of my focus areas was within the element of purpose, and that was making my teaching standards for that lesson transparent to my students. Because I'm a kindergarten teacher, I didn't often do that. I didn't often state the purpose of this lesson and why we are doing this. A lot of times with 5-year-olds, it just happens to be pushed right in with the rest of the lesson. And when you sit there and have to state it, you think that they don't really understand. So one of my focus areas this year was to make my standards that I'm for each lesson more transparent. And I also noticed by the end of the year that really helped drive my instruction as well. So we choose 3 focus areas and we send them to our principal for feedback and approval. And, he might say, I really think you should focus on this. Last year we discussed this at the end of your evaluation, and maybe your year-long assessments. Maybe this year one of your goals is to use a pre and post assessment, and he'll give feedback to you, and you mark your framework on what your goals are. And then every time he comes in and observes you or evaluates you, he relates his feedback to your focus areas, and it really just keeps your instruction driven. Our annual rating or ranking at the end of the year is based on 40% state and local standardized testing achievements. So we use NWEA, and then each grade level chooses 2 other assessments to base our student achievement on. And then 60% is based on observation and evaluation. The percentage of state and local standardized testing that is effective or that's impacting our evaluation just went up within the last 2 years. The state is slowly increased from 30% up to 40%. So now we are at 40%. One of the court cases that I researched was in Michigan, and it was Summer versus Southfield Board of Education. And it was about a teacher who was observed throughout the school year, but was never provided the results and the feedback of her evaluations and observations. So at the end of the year, she received a score of minimally effective, and was, after giving that score, was then dismissed, was let go. Mind you, they dismissed her for the next school year, but they did hire her for summer school. And then when summer school was done, they expected her to cut ties and be done. So I think that was probably hard for her to do. But she received a score of minimally effective and was let go. She came back and said that based on our school and state evaluation plan, we are supposed to be given timely and transparent feedback, and she claims that she wasn't. She also said that based on section